The words landed like a physical blow, except there was no impact point, no place to press my hand and contain the damage. "You're not half the woman your sister is." My mother's voice carried across the roasted chicken and mashed potatoes with the same casual certainty she used to comment on the weather. Time fractured into sharp, disconnected pieces. The golden light from the chandelier suddenly felt too bright, exposing every scratch on the dining table I'd eaten at for 28 years. My father's fork continued its journey to his mouth, mechanical, as if nothing seismic had just occurred. Vivian's phone screen glowed in her lap, her thumbs still moving, texting someone more important than this moment. But my hands had gone completely numb around my water glass. I watched them from somewhere outside my body as I set the glass down with precision, my fingers white against the condensation. The pressure building in my chest wasn't anger yet. It was something colder, sharper, like the moment before glass shatters when everything goes absolutely still. I pushed my chair back. The sound of wood scraping hardwood cut through the ordinary dinner soundtrack of clinking silverware and my father's chewing. 3 faces turned toward me, identical expressions of mild surprise, as if I'd done something unexpected but not particularly important. Then I heard my own voice, calmer than I'd ever managed at this table. "Then she can start paying your rent." The fork stopped halfway to my father's mouth. Vivian's thumbs froze mid-text. My mother's face shifted through confusion, comprehension, then something close to panic. "Rent?" My father's whisper sounded like it had traveled through broken glass. "What rent?" "My name is Nora. I'm 31, and I'm a financial analyst who spent 3 years balancing everyone's books except my own story. This is about what happens when you finally stop being invisible. Most people assume I'm naturally quiet, but that's not quite accurate. I learned early that in my parents' house, silence purchased temporary peace, and for a long time, I convinced myself that peace, even the fragile, conditional kind, was worth the price of disappearing. My job at the logistics firm near Portland Harbor taught me that numbers don't lie. Systems make sense. Every input has a predictable output. I found comfort in that reliability, in spreadsheets that balanced and forecasts that followed logical patterns. My small apartment overlooking the Willamette River operated on the same principles: predictable, orderly, mine. But Friday nights destroyed that order. Every Friday, I drove to my parents' suburban house with its perfect hedges and pretended we were the family the neighbors saw. Inside those walls, I reverted to supporting character in Vivian's endless highlight reel. My sister collected accomplishments the way some people collect stamps: high school debate champion, full-ride law scholarship, corner office by 29. She moved through life expecting doors to open, and they did. My parents held up each achievement like evidence of superior genetics, proof that they'd gotten at least one daughter right. Meanwhile, I'd worked 2 jobs through college, paid my own tuition at 17, and never once asked for help because I'd learned that asking meant hearing about everything Vivian had done without asking. The comparison was the punishment. The invitation to Friday dinners came wrapped in obligation. "This family has a seat for you," my father would say, with his half-joking smile that made refusal feel like betrayal. My mother called if I was even 5 minutes late, her voice tight with manufactured concern that really meant, "Don't embarrass us by not showing up." So I showed up. Every Friday, I sat at that table and listened to my mother narrate Vivian's latest victories while my father nodded along like she was reading scripture. I pushed food around my plate and practiced the specific kind of smile that says, "I'm fine," when you're actually hollowing out from the inside. But that particular Friday felt different before I even walked through the door. My mother's text that morning had been strange. "Make sure you're on time tonight. Important family discussion." The phrasing felt ominous, like she'd been practicing it. When I arrived, the tension was almost visible. My mother kept rearranging the silverware, precise movements that suggested barely controlled emotion. Vivian radiated smug satisfaction, the kind that comes from knowing a secret everyone else will learn soon enough. My father cleared his throat repeatedly, the tell that preceded every difficult conversation he'd ever avoided. I set the table in silence, muscle memory guiding my hands, while my mind tried to identify the threat I could feel gathering like a storm system. The conversation started exactly where it always did, with Vivian. She had a conference presentation, a professional triumph, another reason for my parents to beam with proprietary pride. I offered the expected congratulations while cutting my chicken into increasingly smaller pieces. "I led a major project this week," I said during a brief silence, testing whether this Friday might be different. "My director said the analysis probably saved us $500,000 in—" "You're doing fine, Nora." My mother's interruption was surgical. "But Vivian's work impacts hundreds of people. It's different." There it was. The diminishment delivered with maternal certainty, the hierarchy reinforced over dinner like it was encoded in our family DNA. I focused on my breathing, counting silently. Just another Friday. Just another round of the same script we'd been performing since Vivian won her first debate trophy, and I learned that coming in second meant coming in invisible. Then my father leaned back with an exhale that suggested incoming announcement. Speaking of impact, Vivian helped us sort through some mortgage paperwork last month. She's been such a blessing. The temperature in my body dropped 10 degrees. Mortgage paperwork. Blessing. 3 years of automatic payments flashed through my mind like evidence photos. Every 15th of the month, $2,847 leaving my account. Every just this once that became routine. Every don't tell anyone that isolated me. Every vacation I didn't take, every graduate course I postponed, every dream I delayed because family comes first, and I believed that meant me last. "It wasn't a big deal," Vivian said with practiced modesty, still looking at her phone. My fork stopped moving. The room seemed to tilt slightly, everything sliding toward some inevitable collision I could suddenly see coming. My mother must have noticed something shift in my expression because she gave me that look. The patronizing head tilt that always preceded instructions to be reasonable, to remember my place, to stop making things difficult. Then she said it, the sentence that finally severed whatever had been holding me in place. "You're not half the woman your sister is." Something inside me didn't break. It crystallized, became sharp and clear and completely done with staying small. The words that left my mouth surprised me with their steadiness. "Then she can start paying your rent." Silence crashed into the room like a physical force. "Rent?" My father's voice cracked on the word. "What rent?" I didn't flinch. "The mortgage payments, for 3 years, every single month." 3 faces registered identical shock, moving through denial towards something that looked like fear. "Nora, don't be dramatic." My mother recovered first, reaching for control. "We never asked you to—" "Every month," I interrupted, my voice still eerily calm. "Just this once. We'll handle it next month. Don't let the bank send a notice. I have every payment record, every text message, everything." My father's face drained of color. "You shouldn't bring that up now. This isn't the time." There it was. The familiar script where my truth became my inappropriate behavior, where speaking up meant I was the problem, where the family's comfort mattered more than my reality. I stood, hands gripping the chair back. What's inappropriate is pretending Vivian saved a home I paid to keep standing. "Nora, maybe you misheard what Mom—" Vivian started, but I was already moving. I grabbed my coat, walked out into the cold Portland night, and felt something strange. Not regret, but relief. The relief of finally hearing my own voice after years of silence. That night, I opened my laptop and stared at the automatic payment screen. The cursor blinked over the cancel button like a heartbeat. "Are you sure?" the confirmation box asked. This time I was. The first month after canceling the payments felt like living in a new time zone. In the days that followed, back in my apartment overlooking the river, I established new rhythms that belonged entirely to me. On the 15th, when the money didn't automatically vanish from my account, I sat at my kitchen table watching the balance stay stable and realized I'd been holding my breath for 3 years. The silence from my parents echoed louder than any conversation. No calls, no texts, no Friday dinner invitations. The absence felt like space opening up, room to breathe. I started running along the Willamette River at dawn, just me and the rhythmic sound of my feet hitting pavement. The physical exhaustion helped quiet the mental loop of everything I should have said differently, everything I should have said sooner. Eventually, the running became less about escape and more about claiming something. My mornings, my route, my pace. On Thursdays, I joined a pasta-making class at the community center downtown. I learned to roll dough thin enough to see light through it, learned to laugh with strangers who knew nothing about my family dynamics and didn't care. One of them, a retired teacher named Margaret, made a joke about difficult daughters, and I didn't flinch. Progress. Weekends meant hiking Mount Hood with college friends I'd been slowly rebuilding connections with. People I'd drifted from during the years when every spare dollar an hour went to my parents' mortgage. Sarah, my former roommate, took one look at me on that first hike and said, "You look different, like you're actually here." I realized she was right. I'd been half present for years, always calculating, always anxious about the next payment. 6 weeks after the dinner confrontation, Mrs. Jensen sent me a photo. She was my parents' elderly neighbor, the kind who noticed everything while pretending to notice nothing. The text came through on a Sunday morning while I was drinking coffee on my balcony. The image showed my childhood home, the house I'd kept from foreclosure, decorated with a banner stretched across the porch. "Congratulations, Vivian, for preserving our family home." My coffee cup froze halfway to my mouth. The liquid inside probably went cold, but I couldn't feel temperature anymore. Couldn't feel anything except the white-hot clarity of complete betrayal. Preserving? Vivian? Family home? Every sacrifice, every late-night transfer, every moment I'd told myself, family comes first. Erased, rewritten, handed to someone else like a participation trophy she'd never earned. I walked inside to my desk, my hands steady despite the anger coursing through me. The folder of payment records sat in the bottom drawer where I'd filed it away, thinking I was done needing proof. I pulled it out and spread the contents across my dining table. 3 years of bank statements, mortgage payment confirmations, text message screenshots, emails requesting just one more month. It looked less like financial records and more like documentary evidence of systematic erasure. My phone rang. Sarah, her voice tight with discomfort. "Nora, I need to tell you something. Your parents are planning this big family appreciation dinner in Seattle next month. They asked me to make a slideshow for it." I closed my eyes. Let me guess. Celebrating Vivian. It's worse. They want to highlight her as the reason the house was saved. They gave me captions calling her the anchor of the family. Anchor, savior, hero. All the words I'd earned by paying bills in silence. "Send me the file," I said. "Nora, are you sure you want to, I'm very sure." When the slideshow arrived in my email, I opened it with hands that had stopped shaking weeks ago. Photos of Vivian posing on the porch, my parents embracing her in front of the house, captions dripping with gratitude for sacrifices she'd never made. I created a copy and added what they'd erased. After their final celebratory slide, I inserted a simple timeline. Every payment I'd made, displayed in clear bar graphs. 3 years of support, documented and undeniable. Then screenshots of my mother's messages, partially blurred for privacy, but clear enough in meaning. And finally, a photo of the house with one line of text. The truth deserves a place too. I saved the file to my laptop, backed it up to the cloud, and put a copy on a USB drive I carried in my bag, like evidence of my own existence. 3 weeks passed in a blur of packing and preparation. I moved into my new Seattle apartment, bright, quiet, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline. I bought a light gray sofa, an oak dining table, one tall bookshelf. For the first time in my adult life, I walked into a space that belonged entirely to me, purchased with money that hadn't been rerouted to someone else's emergency. The invitation to the appreciation dinner arrived via text from my mother, formal, impersonal. Family appreciation dinner, dress nicely. No acknowledgement of 3 months of silence, no apology, no recognition that anything had changed. I didn't go to seek their approval, I went to finish something. On the night of the dinner, I arrived early at the restaurant in downtown Seattle. It glowed with amber lighting, the kind of upscale venue where my parents could perform successful family for an audience. Through the glass windows, I could see familiar faces. My parents at the center, Vivian in an emerald dress, relatives I hadn't seen in years, everyone dressed for a ceremony. And it was a ceremony, just not the one they'd planned. Earlier that week, I'd contacted the restaurant and explained I was part of the family event, that I needed to deliver an updated slideshow file to their AV technician. The venue coordinator had been accommodating, giving me the technician's email. I'd sent my version with a note that this was the final approved file from the family, a small lie that ensured the truth would be displayed. I waited outside, watching through the glass as my father took the microphone. His voice carried through the restaurant's ambient noise. "We're here to honor our daughter Vivian, who stepped up during our family's difficult time, who helped us keep the home that's been in our family for decades." Applause rippled through the room. Cameras flashed. The slideshow began on a large screen behind the family table. Vivian on the porch, Vivian holding official-looking papers, Vivian smiling beside my mother. Caption after caption, constructing a fiction so complete it could have been true if I hadn't been the one actually living it. Then the screen flickered. A bar graph appeared, then another. Then payment dates, dollar amounts, 3 years of financial support spreading across the screen in undeniable clarity. The applause died mid-clap. My parents froze. Vivian's champagne glass stopped halfway to her mouth. I stepped through the entrance into the light. "If the truth makes anyone uncomfortable tonight," I said, my voice carrying across the sudden silence, "that's not my problem." Every head in the room turned. My father looked at me like I was a ghost he'd never expected to haunt him. My mother's face collapsed, not into shame, but into the panic of exposure. I walked toward the screen, each step deliberate. For 3 years, I paid the mortgage on that house. Not 1 month. Every month, quietly, consistently, while you— I looked directly at my parents. Rewrote the story to make it easier to applaud. My father found his voice. "Nora, we need to take this outside." "Why?" I asked. "You wanted everyone here to know what Vivian did. Why shouldn't they know what I did?" Whispers erupted like small fires. 3 years? She paid all of it. I knew something wasn't right. Vivian stood, her composure cracking. "I didn't ask them to do this. I just thought—" "You thought nothing," I said, not cruelly, but plainly. "You enjoyed being the hero in a story that was never yours." My mother finally spoke, her voice shaking. "Nora, we didn't want to embarrass you by—" I laughed, the sound surprising even me. "Embarrass me by telling the truth? By acknowledging what I did? That's an interesting definition of embarrassment." The USB drive in my pocket felt heavy with everything else I could reveal. Every text message, every delayed life plan, every sacrifice. But I didn't need to weaponize anything more. The numbers on the screen were enough. "For the record," I said, looking around the room, "I don't want the house. I don't want credit. I just refuse to be erased." My father reached toward me. "Nora, please wait." But I was done waiting. I turned and walked toward the exit, my heels clicking against the marble floor, each step feeling lighter than the last. Outside, the cool Seattle air wrapped around me. I stood on the restaurant steps, breathing deeply, and realized this wasn't revenge. It was release. Inside, they could argue, cry, reframe. It didn't matter anymore. The truth had been spoken. I had stepped out of the shadow they'd kept me in, and once you step into your own light, you understand that going back isn't even an option. It's an impossibility. 2 days later, someone knocked on my apartment door. Through the peephole, I saw my parents standing closer together than I'd seen them in years, looking smaller somehow, diminished by something they couldn't reframe or dismiss. I opened the door but didn't smile. They stepped inside, taking in my space with expressions that suggested they were seeing me clearly for the first time. The morning light filled my apartment, catching the edges of my bookshelf, my new table, the life I'd built without them. "Nora," my mother's voice cracked immediately. "We're sorry. We were wrong. We shouldn't have let the story become what it did. We shouldn't have asked you to carry so much alone." My father added quickly, like he'd rehearsed it. "We talked. We want to put your name on the house deed. You earned it." I let the words settle in the space between us. I don't need it, I said quietly. I have a home now, my own. What I needed was respect, honesty, not a deed that comes 3 years too late. I paused, then added with finality, I'm declining your offer. I'll send you a formal letter this week stating that in writing. Silence filled the room, but it was different from the silence at their table. This one had weight, substance, the presence of something real finally being acknowledged. I'm not angry anymore, I continued, but I'm done disappearing. If we rebuild anything, it starts with you understanding that I exist, not as Vivian's sister, not as the quiet one, as Nora, the person who's been here all along. My mother's hands trembled. My father stared at the floor like the truth had finally dragged him somewhere unfamiliar and uncomfortable. We understand, my mother whispered. Do you? I asked. Because understanding means it can't happen again. Not in small ways. Not in any ways. They nodded, both of them, and something shifted. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But an opening. A small space where we might eventually breathe without old stories crushing us. When they left, the apartment felt even brighter. I walked to my balcony and looked out over the Seattle skyline, realizing I'd crossed a threshold there was no returning from. And for the first time in 31 years, the future felt entirely mine. I stood on that balcony long after the door closed, watching the city lights blink against the darkening sky. For years, I believed keeping peace meant keeping quiet. But silence doesn't protect you. It erases you. Choosing myself didn't break my family. It finally broke the story that kept me small, the narrative that made my presence conditional on my invisibility. A week later, Vivian called. Her voice came through my phone speaker tentative, stripped of its usual confidence. Can we talk? In person? We met at a neutral coffee shop near Pike Place Market. She arrived looking uncertain, none of the polished composure she usually wore like armor. I didn't know, she said immediately before even sitting down. About the payments, about how long you'd been covering them. They told me they'd worked it out, that they were handling it. I studied her face, looking for deception and finding only uncomfortable truth. But you accepted the credit. You let them throw that party. You saw that banner. I know. She looked down at her untouched coffee. I convinced myself it was harmless, that you wouldn't care because you'd moved on. But that was just me avoiding how uncomfortable the truth made me feel. She finally met my eyes. I'm sorry. Not for what I didn't know, but for what I chose not to question. It wasn't the apology I'd imagined during all those angry nights, but it was real, imperfect and honest. I don't need us to be close, I said carefully. But I need you to stop benefiting from stories that erase me. I will, she said. I already told them I'm not accepting any narrative that doesn't include what you actually did. And for what it's worth, I told everyone at the dinner what really happened after you left. I nodded slowly. It didn't undo the years of being overshadowed, but it was a crack in the pattern, a small break in the cycle. We finished our coffee without resolving everything, but with something established, boundaries, acknowledgement, the beginning of something more honest than what we'd had before. Now, months later, my parents and I speak occasionally, carefully. They respect the boundaries I've set, though I can tell it costs them something to hold back their old habits. We meet for lunch sometimes, in public places where the scripts can't fully take hold. It's not the family I once hoped for, but it's built on something real now. And Vivian and I exchange texts every few weeks, brief but genuine. Two people learning to exist without the competition that defined us for so long. Maybe that's the real beginning. The moment you realize your voice isn't negotiable. If you've ever carried a burden in silence, if you've been written out of your own story, or if you've finally spoken the truth that terrified you, I see you. Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. And if this resonated, hit subscribe. More stories are coming about finding your voice, standing your ground, and rewriting what family means on your own terms. Before you go, here's a quick bonus for sticking around. If you love learning and growing like I do, you need to try audiobooks. I've got an exclusive deal with Audible. Your first month is completely free. That's access to over 500,000 titles, zero cost to you. All the details are waiting in the description. Don't miss this one.